one of the big risks is that, particularly with the mining town scenarios, mining boom towns, is that the impact is dictated by a board of directors and shareholders and not by governments.
Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I can elaborate on that. So let's talk about some of the Queensland boom towns. So Moranbah, however you want to say that. That's a classic example where property prices went up, hugely, right? So they went up to about $750,000 median house price with like $1,800 a week rent. It was going off, right? And for a long time, I think it had like 30% growth per year for about 10 years, which is insane.
Yeah.
Totally insane. But, and everyone thought, this is the best thing in the world. The mine is stable. It's a big coal mining area. The mine is stable. It's not going anywhere. It's like a 50-year plan for the mine, whatever the case may be. Nothing's going to change. But then I think it was BHP. I would have to double check who the mine owner was. Might not have been BHP, but the mine owner decided there was greater operational efficiency to be gained by looking into fly in, fly out. Changing their operational methodology to fly in, fly out, which completely sucked any demand from the town away, because then people could live for housing.
Yeah.
And so then the market crashed, and it went from a median house price of $750,000 down to a median house. So $750,000 in, let me just double check my numbers. Around about 2013, I think it was $750,000, and then it completely crashed down to about $150,000 in 2018.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's huge.
It's tremendous.
So that's your post pizza nap on the couch. That is.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's the carb crash.
Interestingly,
though, it's bounced back a fair bit.
Hmm.
So it started bouncing back in 2019 and 2020. Do you want to know how much it's grown over the last 12 months, Gabby?
I'd love to.
22.69%.
12 months?
Yep. Now, the interesting thing here is you might be going, oh, my God, it's time to jump into Moranbah again? Yeah. Well, what we can see here is extreme volatility, and this is kind of the point. All right, so it's up to 750, it's down to 150. In fact, if you look at the median house price growth over the last 3 years, it's about 60% over the last 3 years. So it's 20% year on year. So oh my God, it's great. But is that just coming back to equilibrium? What is going on there? There's a lot of other kind of things. I think you're going to find you'll probably have a lot more volatility in these areas, which is really what we want to be avoiding for most investors. Most investors, the idea of trying to time in and time out, trade in and trade out like the share market is pretty high risk. Some people can do it very well, and a lot of money can be made by focusing on these strategies. But just like this is one of those strategies that you need to be really, really, really focused on. It's not a set and forget. This is something that anyone who's traded shares ever is like checking their phone. Like, I'll wake up in the morning and be like, oh, what's the share price? Lunchtime, what's the share price? Dinner, what's the share price? It's very active, and you got to be into it, right? It's almost like a sport.
Yeah.
And I would say the same thing applies for Boomtown Syndrome.
Yeah, because I think just thinking about that, I think part of the risk with that is if that is your strategy, right? If you're like, you know what, I'm not one of those super risk averse investors, and I'm happy to I love property, I love researching locations, I love having my finger on the pulse. I'm going to do that kind of thing and just kind of spot based on these kind of Boomtown signals, right?
Yeah.
But unless you're doing that, as you said, in the same way that you would trade shares, where you're like laser focused on it, like you might catch the wave up, right? And you've done what you set out to do, but then if you're not paying attention to when it turns, it can be worse than when you started.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where people think they might catch the boom up and it sounds like an amazing thing and I can do that. But then it's also paying attention and having the discipline to watch and pay attention to when it's about to turn that people don't really think about.
Yeah.
They're like, I can spot the up. Look, I'm going to wait till I can, and I see it, and then it goes up, and then you miss the point that it turns, and then it's you're back earlier than where you were. You're worse off. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And this has been one of the biggest things that's caused the most amount of heartache. There's so many people who have come to work with us in our buyers agency who have like, oh, I've got 6 houses, and I'm like, well, what do you need help with? And they're like, well, they've all lost money. And it's like, oh my God, crikey, because they've chased these gains. They've chased the hype and the hype and headlines and these fast growth areas.
Yeah, because I think we come off the back of a lot of developers as well, I guess, would follow these kind of, because they're a bit more risk averse, right? No, opposite of risk averse, risk tolerant.
Yeah.
Where they can kind of spot, again, they're doing this all the time. Like their business is to make sure that they're developing in the right locations.
Yeah.
And then also that they can sell that hype back to people, being like, well, there's this massive infrastructure thing coming. Jump on board, ride the wave up with us, which again might be great. You might get, you might buy a new build under market according to them, and then you ride it up and you get some good gains over the next few years. But then it's like after that, it just dies because, as you said, jobs may leave. What's a psychographic profile that's keeping people there? We don't know.
Exactly.